We are going to be in 1 Samuel, finishing up chapter 14 and doing chapter 15. You have 5 minutes to grab your Bibles, to finish your lunch or whatever else you're doing, and we'll see you soon. Hello. Hello, friends. We actually got Sandy here. Sandy back.
Good morning.
To have you with us.
Got about half an hour. Well, 40 minutes.
I accept this. Sandra, it's great to see you as well. Sandy, are you going to Northwestuary? Are you going to encounter people face to face?
No, I did that last year at Chino, and I would love to have gone to Northwestuary because of the people that are going. But reality is that I only have 3 weeks vacation a year. I've already used a bunch. And I still have Thanksgiving to sort out, which is always a bit of a conundrum.
Next year, they're going to be closer. Next year, it's going to be Chicago.
Are you going to Chicago?
I don't know. Maybe.
I have it penciled in. I've said to Sam I would like to, or to Chad, I'd love to go. But I've also got it on my heart that if the Appalachian guys have just sit around the campfire and, share stories and chill thing, I want to go to that too. So I got to figure my...
Yeah. Cassandra, for yourself, are you going? No. I accept this. I think that's fine.
Where are you, Cassandra?
Northern California? Is that right? Northern California?
Yeah.
Still a big hike to drive it or fly it. Yeah, but at least flying it wouldn't be like... Flying it wouldn't be the 1,000 and change I had to spend on flights last year to get from here to there. That just about blew my mind.
It was surprisingly expensive. I've tried to fly to Montana before because I have friends there, and it was like $1,000 plus flight. Most people drive because it's cheaper, even though it's like 12 hours or 15 or something. I forget.
That's what I've done when I go to North Carolina before, but because it's so much cheaper.
When my wife and I were in Malta, for a couple of weeks, and we spent like a weekend in Greece, and it was $50 to get a flight.
Oh, sorry, you roboted it a bit on mine.
I roboted a bit. I'm sorry.
Just a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
It frozen.
So it caught. Okay, I think I'm back. I hope I'm back. So it was $50 to take a flight from Malta to Athens.
Oh my goodness.
People just can't appreciate because there's so much stupid country over here. It was like I was just like, that's a Greyhound ticket. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the worst I would have had is, so the 2 days drive, if I was to go see Jack in Chisasibi, would have been $4,000. And I don't remember if that was each way or combined, but I still want to go there. And I'm thinking, I almost went there a year or so back, but then the fires. And so there's one gas station when you get to the long drive part. You have to fill up there or you won't make it. Plus the road got closed just like people were, what do they call that thing when they're staying somewhere safe at the gas station?
Sanctuary, refugees.
Yeah, like that. They were being told to drive. If they were further, they were being told to drive back there and shelter in place. I think it is. Because you just couldn't get through. So I'm just like, I still would love to go see it. I would love to go there one day. I really would. Gotta put my thinking cap on. We've lost her. She has gone black. Oh no.
She's come back in a different window?
Okay.
Cassandra, one of these is wrong. This is bizarre. All right.
It said to open the app or something.
Okay, there. I got rid of the other one. Maybe that helps. Okay, let's go into the text, shall we? I think Michael might join us. We'll see what happens. We are finishing up a story. This is interesting because this is kind of a little summary bit, but we covered last week, Sandy, 2 stories of Saul being rejected. This is the end of the second story of Saul being rejected, but the most famous one of him getting rejected is what we will be focusing on. It's got some controversy to it. So it'll be a great little passage to talk about. So Sandy, I only have you for so long. So how about you read?
Half hour, I was going to say, can I start?
Yeah.
When Saul had taken the kingship over Israel, he fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, against the Ammonites, against Edom, against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines. Wherever he turned, he routed them. And he did valiantly and struck the Amalekites and delivered Israel out of the hands of those who plundered them. Now the sons of Saul were Jonathan, Ishvi, and Malchishua. And the names of his two daughters were these. The name of the firstborn was Merab, and the name of the younger, Michal. And the name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz. And the name of the commander of the army was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. Kish was the father of Saul, and Ner, the father of Abner, was the son of Abiel. There was hard fighting against the Philistines in those days of Saul. All the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any young man or any valiant man, he attached him to himself.
Excellent. Kirk, let me see your face before I let you on. Okay, now you can be let on. It's good.
Everything in my area is shut down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm in Picayune, and everything, even Walmart, is shut down because of a hurricane.
I was going to say.
That happened yesterday. I was streaming with Chad. He's going to post it. I don't know when he's going to post it, but in the middle of it, what's his name? Neil got hit by the hurricane. He's like, it's 50-50 chance I'm gone in the middle of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But fortunately, my Wi-Fi is now up. So.
Oh, good. And we got Michael with us too. Okay, first off, I just have to share this because I think it's funny. Abner, the son of Ner. What do you guys know what Ab means in Hebrew?
No.
Abba. Christians will know Abba.
That's father?
Is it really?
Father. Abner means my father is Ner, and he's referred to over and over again as Abner, the son of Ner.
That's kind of funny.
Obviously, he's the son of Ner. His name is Abner. It's like if it was Johnson, the son of John. It's just like, you don't have to tell me this every single time, guys. I know. I know that's what's going on. We also have the introduction of the princess. She'll become an important character, Michal. And we have this. It's basically a summary of what we've been reading and what's to follow. Is Saul is constantly at war. His enemies are on every side. When you're talking about the enemies being on every side, there's passages in Deuteronomy that speak of your enemies being on all sides and how it's a bad position to be in, and that might be related to him being cursed. But we'll get there, I promise. This is interesting, and he did valiantly and struck the Amalekites and delivered Israel out of the hands of those who plundered them. Because that is basically the story that we're going to be covering in 15. So some people think that it's a summary of what's just about to happen. Yeah, I could go either way, Adam. Anyway, does anyone have anything to say before we get into the next section, which I promise will be lots of fun? Nada. Okay, we go into it then. Sandy, because you're leaving early, you read.
And Samuel said to Saul, "The Lord sent me to anoint you king over his people Israel. Now therefore listen to the words of the Lord. Thus says the Lord of hosts, I have noted what Amalek did to Israel in opposing them on the way when they came up out of Egypt. Now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey.
So this is one of the bits that a lot of people consider very controversial, because it's devote to destruction all of them. Do not spare them, both kill man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. It's funny. Was it Rashi? I think there's a Jewish commentator in the Middle Ages that said that the descendants of Amalek participated in divination and could turn themselves into animals. And that's why you had to kill all the animals, because they could be like skinwalkers or whatever, which is a fun interpretation. I don't take that perspective. I tend to think that part of this business is that oftentimes when people went to war, they would take slaves, they would take plunder, they would become rich by going to war, right? The Vikings famously did this, right? Some of like in the Middle East, there would be raiding parties that sometimes they wouldn't even want to utterly destroy something because they made their money raiding, right? But in this situation, the idea is that there's a manner of justice that has to take place. And so you're not supposed to become wealthy by it, right? It's not to your benefit that you wipe all these things out.
So you were saying Rashi was saying that they were practicing divination. Do you know if this is just in Rashi, or did he source that from like the Talmud or other sources? Or Midrash?
I came across two sources. It was either Rashi or Maimonides. I can't remember who. But they were saying that there was a participation in in some sort of form where they could change their appearance.
I see it, but you don't know if any Midrash or...
Yeah, it's not in the... I don't think it's in the Talmud. At some point, I'd like to go to the other passages. So maybe this is a good time to bring up the other places where this stuff appears. So this is the famous story where right after they get the water from the rock. You guys know that story. Moses hits the rock and water comes out. Then we immediately get this. Sandy, read again. Actually, we'll go down a bit. So it's right after this. This is, they go to battle. Famous story where if Moses' hands are held high, they win. If they're low, they lose. So here, just read this end part, starting at 14.
Then the Lord said to Moses, write this as a memorial in a book, and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, The Lord is my banner, saying, a hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation.
Okay. Anything you guys notice in there?
Let me see. Nothing in particular. Do you think there's anything there when it comes to the analogy of the altar?
Yeah, so there's going to be something put up so that you can never forget about this. Write this as a memorial. This is something that a lot of people will note. It's a memorial so that you don't forget, to blot out of memory. This language gets used of Amalek. Remember to forget them. And how we remember Amalek is that it repeatedly says, you are not to remember them. So there's this blotting out, this getting rid of from your memory. And then this is the bit in Deuteronomy Sandy, you've read so much. I'm going to ask Kirk to read because I know he's always eager to read. Start from the word remember, please, Kirk.
Okay. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you came out of Egypt, and how he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, and cut off your tail, those who were lagging behind you, and he did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies around you, in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. You shall not forget.
You shall not forget to forget him. Isn't that great, Sandy?
It actually is. But
Kind of funny. So within the rabbinic commentaries, they say he attacked you on the way when you were faint and weary, because it's right after they get water from the rock.
Well,
So in some of the traditions, they believe that Amalek is comes in like a raiding party to attack them when they are weak, when they're exhausted, before they get to the oasis, kind of a thing.
well, did Christians have a different understanding of who Amalek is in history than Jews?
No, I wouldn't say they do.
Okay.
In a lot more rabbinic material is up for it to be metaphoric, his descendants, whereas Christians seem to take it a lot more literal, his descendants. The Amalekites are a descendant of Esau, but it's specifically this one group of them, the Amalekites, are eternal enemies. And you can see this. In the other one, it said, this will be, what does it say? The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. And in this one, it says that you will only get a chance to blot them out once the Lord has given you rest, once he gives you rest from all your enemies around you.
I see. So, yeah, so basically the same, except that there's more Jews believe it's descendants of Amalek is figurative, whereas Christians are more literal.
Yes, yeah, and we'll get to that by the end of the story because there's a couple of things that happen. But this is the period of time, in my opinion, the story that we are at today. That this is the story where they've been given enough rest that they finally can wipe out the Amalekites. So they're in the desert, they're doing their wandering, all this stuff. They don't have an actual chance, an opportunity to wipe out the Amalekites. That doesn't happen for generations. But now is the time that they're going to go to war with them. The fulfillment. And that even in the Torah, it says this will be from generation to generation. So now is the time. Does anyone have any thoughts or anything or concerns before we go any further?
Well, so do you think if you were talking to somebody who's critical of religion and they were bringing this up, what do you think you would respond to them about why the Israelites had to do this with God's command? Just your personal ethical perspective.
It's a great question. I'll go to Michael first, who's probably going to say the correct apologetic response.
Wait, what was about why God says this thing?
Yeah, utterly destroying, wiping out, nothing left.
Well, my thought is that it's a thing that God says, and he also says the same thing about Sodom and Gomorrah. But the difference is that Abraham argues with God about it, and Saul has no such inclination to do that. He's rather eager about it, but he, does it. He doesn't actually fulfill the obligation there. So I think that Saul is really the one implicated, and even if you think about like because he mentions the animals and stuff, and think about like in Jonah, Jonah, he's talking to Jonah and saying like, look, there's also even the animals, like, hey,
Right.
if it's an Assyrian cow, it's still a cow. It didn't choose to be born in Assyria. So like Saul could have at least said, but why, God? Why should we destroy the ox and the sheep and the camels and the donkeys? And then if he had even had that thought, then he probably should have extended that to children and then women, and then like, is there any righteous people or something? So I think that it really is just a reflection on Saul and his relationship with God, more so than because he already, like, Abraham already happened, so you already know, like, God is open for discussion if you think he's being too mean.
Well, I
That's
mean,
great.
I don't think it's
Michael, I really
necessarily.
appreciate your perspective on this because I haven't heard other people bring this up. You brought this up last week as well, is that other biblical characters actually talk with God. And they, like Moses does the same thing. God says, I could wipe out all of Israel right now and I'll restart with you. And Moses has a conversation with God. Says, please consider your name, right? Like the things
Yeah.
aren't necessary the way that people think that they are.
But I'm curious. Do you think there's any way to explain just how bad the Amalekites were that would justify even killing like infants? Because that's the main ethical problem people have with the story. It's not necessarily that like, oh, you can't kill civilians or during war. I mean, obviously, if somebody's a group of national security, the problem is specifically intending to target all people instead of specifically the main ones who've hurt you or in a position to hurt you, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I think that ethical thing is connected to the ethical idea of like the blank slate, um, which, well, first of all, that goes in the face of some evidence. So, and also kind of the biblical, concept about the sins of the father being visited on the son for 3 generations or whatever. But which is, it's interesting because I don't necessarily. So this is, I had a discussion with a guy he's a doctor and he's done like a ton of research on the topic of epigenetics. And
Right.
And the thing is that these are these are changes in the expression of genes that are transmitted from parent to child, but they actually have like a temporary lifespan. Like unless
Right.
if the situation continues, then that certain gene will keep being passed on. But if a situation changes, and like whatever the threat or the thing that causes the change no longer exists, it goes away. But I mean, you could say in some sense, like, if you have a horrible culture that has been breeding people in horrible practices, like, that behavior actually does get ingrained into their genes, at least to a point where it's going to be expressed in the next generation or two, even if it's not like a permanent thing. And so, like,
Mhm.
if you adopt babies that like have a genetic like history of murdering their parents, like, that's bad. You know,
Yeah. There's big questions related to that. Let me ask Sandy and Cassandra to give a little bit of response before I jump in.
Do you not call her Cassandra anymore?
She goes by Cassandra occasionally, but then I get confused because I've sometimes called her Sandy, and I'm like, no. Okay, what am I doing?
So I'm reading the epigenetics comments in the chat too.
Yeah.
It's always an interesting topic to me because of my sons. Like whatever caused Jacob's whatever caused Jacob's interesting bits, we'll say, like the bone issues he had to have surgery for twice, the deafness and the autism. They tracked, well, I mean, they could probably find out if we went for testing now, but 20 years ago or so, when he was around 10, they did some, or maybe a little younger, they did some family testing. I don't know that so they said with the tools they had at the time, they could not discern the link within me and his dad, but they could see sort of where it was attached to in him, that it had a name, and that he would have something like a 20% or 20 to 50% chance if he had children to pass it on. And his brother would have an up to 20% chance to pass it on, even though he didn't directly have what he had. And there were several possibilities of what had triggered it and why. So I'm always kind of like, oh yeah, it's an interesting place for sure, because you just don't know. You don't know what you're going to get. Life, it wasn't definitely environmental only, nor was it genetic only. And that's what I'm watching the chat going, yep.
Yeah.
Like that. It's interesting.
That's good. Cassandra? You're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes. Perfectly.
Okay. Oh, well, I don't think I have a comment at this time, so a little anticlimactic.
That's all right. Did you say you have a comment?
I have not at this
Okay.
moment.
So what I would say is that my understanding of who, first off, our lives are in the hands of God. This is an argument that was done by, was it Augustine? It was either Augustine or Aquinas. Let's see how I go. And someone said, how do you justify, it was specifically Joshua, the book of Joshua, and the brutality within there, that God kills all these people in Joshua. And their response was, well, technically God kills all of us, so we have to start from there and work forward. And so I think the situation of humanity is so bad that God would be justified if he did not save Noah and his family. I don't think God would have been unjust if he killed all of humanity. So when you take it from that perspective, it becomes, oh, okay. So he's doing something, but he actually could do more. He could devote all of us to destruction. Question of epigenetics is interesting. Sometimes there are some traditions, though they're not biblical traditions, that Amalek is related to the Nephilim and all this business. That there's divination, that there's these practices. These would occur clan wide. So then the women and the children would be affected by it.
Yeah, there is also a really interesting thing because, because in Leviticus, when it talks about like all of the sexual practices that it says what the Canaanites do and what the Egyptians do, and most of them are resulting in children being born, they're compatible with that. And then when you have the like later in the law where God talks about like the people that want to be part of Israel or whatever, like if they are if they're of those nations that have those practices, like I think it's 10 generations until they can be considered like part of the assembly. So it's like, okay, if you can go 10 generations without marrying your sister, then you guys are okay to be married to the rest of the people, which is
right.
Like it's an interesting thing because you think about it, it's like you have super high like dangerous genetic like inbreeding effects, but then that's going to get lessened over many generations of good marriage practice. So there's something to that I think if it doesn't necessarily justify killing the people, it does justify like some of those separations and things.
Well, I was just gonna ask David, do you consider yourself somebody who subscribes to divine command theory and morality?
It's see the issue is knowing what a divine. Sorry, I blurred all those words. A divine command is. So I find exception with people using these passages to justify things like future battles. Yeah. Yeah, there's bits of it. I don't know
So
if I want to go.
only in specific situations.
Yeah. Yeah, but like
But the main problem I'm questioning, and I don't think this is necessarily evidence against religion or God being good, but it is a reasonable question. Like, if God is all merciful, why would he create human beings in such a condition where there is, say, gratuitous suffering, where there is babies who die at a young age for no reason or have cancer? And
yeah.
I understand, well, we accept as a statement of faith that God created all life. So there's that. But if God is all good and all merciful, then why couldn't he create the conditions for life in such a way where we wouldn't have to go through seemingly gratuitous suffering?
Yeah, so the general Christian answer is that human beings are created with so much, like that we are created having sovereignty over creation. Okay. And that sovereignty over creation that we have, where we are put in charge of it, is that means that man's disobedience introduces something into the created order that is horrifying. A child is not accidentally born with fetal alcohol syndrome, right? Or the genes for alcoholism or whatever. These are byproducts of choice, right? So to put it in line with a brokenness of the universe, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
To a degree, although the friend I was mentioning whose youngest son is adopted with that, from some of her studies, it can also, you can also see evidence of it handed down more than one generation and not just directly through the affected, so my dad was alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, I could, even though it doesn't show in the same way it would on somebody who's obviously got traits of fetal alcohol syndrome, could have something in my makeup that could pass on to my children.
Yes.
Making
But so this is the idea though, and people find this very uncomfortable, is that there are passages where it seems like things are passed down to the children. But that is a decision that the parent, like a grandparent, makes. You can say the parent didn't make it, the grandparent made that decision. But when we do terrible things for ourselves and to other people, they have real effects. This is part of human beings being put over creation.
It makes for difficult and interesting conundrums in some of the discussions that I have in some of the Christian conversational groups, because having been forced to look at some of the genetics of things and the social history of things, I tend to approach things with a little bit less, well, obviously God wouldn't do that, or this or that, or black and white judgment. I'm just like, no, some of this stuff just is. The Bible knew it. Science is noticing it. People should maybe talk about it, and we should all consider our choices, but at the same time, we have to deal with not just, blanket judgments on it.
Michael, okay. I want everyone. You get one more chance to talk. I want to move on from this topic, but Michael, I know that you have some thoughts. We're going to say it because I want to get to some other stuff that's happening in this text.
Yeah. So I think that another thing that I don't think many people really think through the full implications of it, which I'm going to say, okay, first of all, both if you're a follower of Judaism or Christianity, in both cases, you believe God is omniscient. And in that sense, like, nothing is hidden from him, including all of our thoughts and experiences, which is why, logically, that's why the commandment against covetousness is so important because it's like if you think about it, it's like what if like your maybe to bring it down to earth, like if your dad could read all your thoughts, like if your dad could read your mind and was forced to read your mind, how would you how would that affect the way that you think about lust in your heart or hatred in your heart, or how you despise others that God loves? I think that the incarnation brings it, like I think that is a true thing, because of God's omniscience and his foreknowledge and knowing about all this suffering. Like, first of all, yeah, so he experiences it more than we do, and he chooses to do it, which means that there is something good beyond suffering that he considers makes the suffering worthwhile. But I think in taking the incarnation, then you can, at least for our human understanding, like we can understand that the way God experiences that suffering that we go through and that other people go through is in the same way that we suffer. You can it makes sense if he's just omniscient and there's no incarnation, but there's no way for us to know how it's the same or how it's different. And which I
Okay,
think
this is interesting,
part of
Michael,
it
because I think that is where we're going to be headed.
Yeah.
Kirk, you ask very good questions, but they lead us down many rabbit trails. So I'm going to say, Cassandra, do you have anything you want to add, or shall we continue? Sandy, you have to get going, you told me.
I do, so I'm just going to say goodbye. That's all I have to add.
Good. Okay, so it was good. It's good having you here. That wasn't me kicking her out. She told me when she wanted to leave. So.
I have an appointment. It's true.
Yeah. Okay.
Who wants to read?
Cassandra, could you read now?
Well, has Michael read yet?
No. Oh, Michael's not driving.
Yeah, I'm parked at the moment. So
okay, you give a read.
Okay. So Saul summoned the people and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 men on foot and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul came to the city of Amalek and lay in wait in the valley. Then Saul said to the Kenites, Depart, go down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the people of Israel when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites departed from among the Amalekites.
Okay, let's pause for 1 second. So all of this is like remembering the Exodus story. There was this tribe that was good to them, and then there was a tribe that was bad to them. So it's we're remembering you. We're making distinction. Cassandra, remember what I told you before about this part? It says 2,000 men on foot and 10,000 men of Judah. So it's showing right now that Judah, because Benjamin and Judah, there's going to be a divide because of Saul versus David. You can see it again reiterated in the passage. They're emphasizing that Judah was a part of the group. Okay, continue, Michael.
Okay, where was I?
I believe 7.
Okay, and Saul defeated the Amalekites from Havilah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive and devoted to destruction all the people with the edge of the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fattened calves and the lambs and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. All that was despised and worthless they devoted to destruction.
Hey, that sheep's kind of scrawny. We could kill that one. I can see Cassandra is kind of laughing at this, actually.
What's the meat of baby sheep called? Is it just called mutton?
No,
baby sheep is lamb.
Adult sheep meat.
Yeah.
Mutton. What's baby sheep meat?
Lamb.
Okay.
Lamb chops.
Yeah, which is much more tender and has less of a funk to it. Some people really like that funk. They really dig that mutton. Anything else? Cassandra.
Yeah, I don't think there's not much I could say that we haven't already gone over already. I'm thinking.
No, that's okay.
Um,
Cassandra, you were chuckling. I could see you chuckling. No, were you not chuckling at the destruction of?
All that it was despised that they killed. Yeah, I mean that's just funny. He saved all the good stuff,
Yeah.
killed everything that was worthless.
I mean,
What do you think the
yeah.
logic is behind sparing Agag though?
Well, it
A
might be
political
lined up with
prisoner?
this. He would be the best of the people, and in sometimes you would put on display the king that you spared
Okay.
as well. That it would be like we show them off. Sometimes they
Yeah.
would even bring these guys out at parties. Like it seems so strange, but it would just be like, here we go. There's a scene
Okay.
from 300 where a guy shows up with like a bunch of skulls, and it just goes, "These are all the skulls of the guys who fought against us." Right? Like you hold on to them to prove some kind of a point.
Okay, yeah. So that's just like the exploitation of war. It seemed like God wanted them to avoid that, but Saul kind of he wants the resources and other stuff from it.
That's right.
Hmm.
It is definitely showing like a character thing of that, you know, the despised and the worthless, like the just like yeah, they have no problem killing those, like which those are the ones that, if anything, it's like God would probably hope you have more pity and mercy on them, them or those, So
Mhm.
they're yeah.
Yeah, because this is what he's killing the people too, but he's
Yeah.
taking more care with like the sheep.
And I do think with the king thing, I do think Saul is kind of like, I don't want, like, I'm a king. Being a king is special. If I kill a king, that means kings aren't special. So I don't want it to be true that kings aren't special. So I'm going to make an exception for this other king so that
Yeah.
I'm special too.
Elites.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes there would be there'd essentially be a lynching, or someone would be hung on a tree. That would sometimes be reserved for kings as a way of particularly showing that they've been cursed. But that's a form of their execution, to put on public display that king has been routed utterly. Cassandra, read for us. Go.
The word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. And Samuel was angry, and he cried to the Lord all night. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told Samuel, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself, and turned and passed on, and went down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed be you to the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel said, What then is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen that I hear? Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction. Then Samuel said to Saul, Stop, I will tell you what the Lord said to me this night. And he said to him, Speak.
This is, yeah, love it. I also like that he's just like, oh no, I promise. It was sacrifices to the
Yeah, well,
Lord.
he's doing it again, where this thing, it's like, well, this is for other people. This isn't for me. He has this language that he's using again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I
The
mean,
lack of responsibility.
it's also just strange that he uses this excuse about sacrifice. Like, I mean, I guess he's kind of making that excuse on behalf of the men, because like they all did it. But like, I mean, the way that they understood this stuff, it's like, what is a sacrifice anyway? It's like you kill it and you burn it, and then it goes up to God in the smoke. And so it's like you are already doing that when you destroy your enemies and kill them. So that was when you were supposed to sacrifice them on the battlefield, and you didn't. So that's a lie.
Yeah, the way he says it too, they have brought them from the Amalekites for the people. So he's not even saying that he did it. He just kind of is like, they kind of did this, even though he's king. So he should be like an example, right?
I
Leading.
can't scroll on this.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Teo, can I see you on camera? Okay, awesome. Then I'll let you on. Add to stage. Cool. Okay, awesome. What did you want to scroll to?
When it says that just to see however it says when they killed the despised things, but they kept the best part. Like does it? Because it did. I thought it said the people didn't it?
Yeah.
Saul and the people. Yeah. So
right.
they're
But
all in it
there's no
together.
Saul the second time around. He just says the people did this, not me and the people.
And then this is the thing that Adam did. He's kicking it down the line.
Kings are separate and different from people.
We're so special, guys. They're so special.
But I guess this is part of it, his thing too, because he's kind of slightly shirking his responsibility.
Yeah.
A little bit out of time. He's like, well, the people are so devoted.
Yes.
I did this for you. Yes.
And the king can kill this other guy. Well, and we'll see it in a second. Teo, I know you've been catching up. Did you have anything you wanted to add into the conversation? Could be from earlier.
No, not yet, but I've been enjoying it so far.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Kirk, do you have anything you want to add?
Nothing in particular.
Okay. All right. Kirk, can I get you to read?
So, and Samuel said, "Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the soil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord?" And Saul said to Samuel, "I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. I have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction."
Okay, pause. Look at that. What is his response? I didn't do anything wrong. I listened. I did everything right. Right? He doesn't bow down and say, "You're so right. I have failed. I'm so sorry." It's not what he says. He says, "What are you talking about? I did everything right." What? And it's a false humility, I think. Though you are little in your own eyes, I don't think he is, right? He's the tallest. It's this like false humility. He didn't listen. He didn't obey. Okay, let's continue on. Teo, would you be willing to read for us? Can you read that?
Yes, I would. From 21.
Yes.
But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. And Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to listen than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as the iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king.
Oh, it's so good. This is such a mic drop.
It's very Game of Thrones-esque, isn't it?
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Teo, because what I really want is I want this to be made into a movie, but I want like Peter Jackson to make it into I don't want like a Christian made-for-TV movie. I don't want that. I want kings being put to death. I want someone like Shakespearean putting a finger in someone's face saying these lines.
Do you prefer Tolkien more than Shakespeare?
I have a lot more experience with Shakespeare than I do with Tolkien. So that's all I have to say for that. Any thoughts? I know that Jacob, if he is listening to this, he goes, "Ha ha, Christians, I caught you. To obey is better than sacrifice." Right? God does not want sacrifice.
Let's not put words in Jacob's mouth. I mean, he might do, but Jacob is
No,
not.
I know his perspective.
That sounds very much like what Jacob would say at
Yeah.
this.
But I think even Jacob would say that's only to modern Protestant Christianity, because there are Christians, particularly Catholics and Orthodox, who are not like super big on like just faith and sacrifice, but also on works.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I
But what?
mean, do you think the let me see, has it, I don't see anything in specific.
But there is something here which I like. When Harvey Weinstein was caught, he said he was going to dedicate the rest of his life to like helping the homeless or something like that. Like it's just like people try to redeem evil actions with a good action, right? They try to undo as though like, well, but I dedicated a whole bunch of money to charity. I don't care. I don't care that you dedicated a bunch of money to charity.
Yeah, that was what Paul played the clip from Jordan Hall and Jonathan Peugeot talking about that, and he said it was like the philanthropist trap. The idea that you're gonna like earn a bunch of money by doing something shady and then use the money for good.
Now I can be good.
Yeah, it's not a good way to go about your business.
Yeah.
Certainly not for your own soul.
That's like if it's okay to donate to church like stolen money. Like if you steal something and you feel bad.
Yeah.
Can you give that to it? Can you give that to anyone? Does that make it better?
Yeah.
But I like this line: for rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because I guess that's what Saul's doing, presumption.
Yeah.
Because he is kind of taking on a lot more than he's not relying on Samuel, I guess, to the right degree for what he should be doing.
Or God. I mean, well, because really, he's saying God must have been wrong when he said Samuel must have heard God wrong, or God must not have meant that when he said that, because this is the smart thing to do. So,
right.
which is
the Luciferian intellect, as Jordan Peterson would say.
Yeah. What you're able to justify. Okay, Teo, there's been a demand from the chat. Would you be willing to continue reading? we get you so rarely, and that was very good.
Yes, gladly. Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandments of the Lord and your words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voices. Now therefore, please pardon my sin and return with me, that I may bow before the Lord. And Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel. Oof. As Samuel turned to go away.
Sorry, Teo. One pause. Remember, I was saying the early stuff in this book portrayed God as king. So this idea of like you rejected him, so now he's rejected you as king, I think is like it's again all these conversations we've had about hierarchy within the corner and everything is you didn't set the proper things first. So no, like it doesn't. Yeah, you rejected him, he's rejected you.
Also notice that Saul's doing now, just blaming the people and be like, I'm sorry, I was being a good king and giving the people what they wanted, like a good king is supposed to. Like he's not even apologizing.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great point, Michael. And remember, the word of the Lord, if we read this passage separately, we might interpret the word of the Lord as God's commandment. But within this text, within the early chapters, the word of the Lord is like a person that people see. They see, like they have visions, they experience. The word of the Lord is the person of God. That's how the word of the Lord is present earlier on in this text. So he has rejected not just like a simple rule here or there. He has rejected the person of God. That's how that is appearing within the earlier chapters. which I just think is important because otherwise it just seems, oh, you didn't listen to one thing.
Yeah, because like even with this, how he was with the sacrifices is like, oh, God likes sacrifices. So even if we ignored what he said specifically to make a sacrifice, it's good because we have this input output way of
Interacting with the gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and here's the interesting thing. So, because I was thinking about this earlier on in the chapter, like what he does with the whole thing, and it's kind of like it's the way that people wrestle with that commandment to like destroy everything, and he doesn't take it seriously. Which, if you think about it, it's the thing. So atheists are always saying, look at this, like look how bad your God is that I don't believe exists, and like when you accept that, like what you know, because what he's doing is like he doesn't actually believe God. If he actually believed that that's who God is and what he would wanted, he should be really afraid because that is a angry and vengeful God. And if he didn't believe that, if he believed God was real, but he didn't believe that was his character, he should have argued with him like Abraham. So instead, he does like what the atheists do, what people that don't believe in God do with God, is they use him as an excuse to do what they want by interpreting his commandments as they wish.
Good stuff. Okay, let's continue on because I want to get to something. Last time we got cut off early.
27.
27? That's where we're at? Okay, go ahead.
As Samuel turned to go away, Saul seized the skirt of his robe, and it tore. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you this day, and has given it to a neighbor of yours, who is better than you. And also the glory of Israel will not lie or have regrets, for he is not a man that he should have regrets. Then he said, I have sinned, yet honor me now before the elders of my people and before Israel, and return with me that I may bow before the Lord your God. So Samuel turned back after Saul, and Saul bowed before the Lord.
Okay, so there's a little bit in here that's, I think, so interesting. Earlier it says God regretted making Saul king. And in the same chapter that it says that God regretted making Saul king, it says that the Lord is not a man that he should regret. So right there, does God regret? It's this he regrets the people's decision. Does God not regret what that he made human beings when he sends the flood? Like it's interesting to play with these contradictions. This is a formal contradiction that requires like a contemplation to sit with, to what extent God regrets. And there's another bit, which is it seems like then Saul still does come back and has some amount of repentance. Some amount.
I guess. It sounded like he just wanted to save face or something. Because he wanted him to bow before the elders. Or something like that.
I am sure Joseph has come on specifically to spoil where I'm going to go with this. He knows where I'm going to go. He knows who the Agites are. Joseph?
Hey guys. I've missed most of it, to be honest. I actually don't know where you're going, but it's one of my favorite chapters. And I'm home anyway because I'm on paternity leave. We had a baby this week. So.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Mazel tov.
So this might be a very short visit.
That's all right. What do you think about this bit where Saul repents after he's told that he basically can't?
Well, this section is the reason this is one of my favorite chapters, because at the very beginning of the chapter, we actually had the phrase, and God regretted making Saul king. And here we have the phrase, God of Israel does not lie or have regret. So there's this fascinating theological tension in this chapter because the narrator, whoever wrote the chapter, seems to be disagreeing with Samuel's statement. And that's complicated. Samuel wrote the book. It's also complicated theologically, of course, because does God regret? Does God not regret? And it's also weird actually to translate the second place here as regret because even though the word is the same in Hebrew in both places, normally actually the translations I see here, God doesn't change his mind. Right? So it's more like he's taken the kingship from you and he's not going to change his mind and give it back to you or something, like no matter how much you you say sorry. But yeah, so I think right, so you have this whole thing going where he became king 3 times and he gets rejected 3 times. David also will become king 3 times, like a foreshadowing. And I think part of that, right, points to this whole idea. I think I talked about it before briefly, though I know I haven't made most of these in the past couple weeks. That there are multiple sources that you need to be like.
Yeah, you need to be made king by the people and by God.
Right. And so the fact that there's this combination of, and why there's 3 instead of 2 if there's 2 sources, we can talk about that. I mean, there's more to be said there, but kind of the simple point here is that like, it's not just saving faith, right? Like this is what's really interesting. He's lost the kingship according to God, but has he lost the kingship according to the people? No. And not only that, but Samuel knows that and is still willing to help him maintain his kingship in front of the people. Now, that might be because there isn't an alternative yet, like David isn't ready or something. We could also talk about there's actually so there are 3 parts, right? There's kingship from God, kingship to the people. There's also like that your children, that you start the dynasty. Right? That's really the 3rd part.
Right.
That your children will be kings after. So I think those are really the 3 parts, and I think if we map them, we can probably figure out that book for David.
And I think it's also very interesting because God never wanted Saul to be king. There's an essence in which he says, I'm only doing this because it's to meet the people. So he still picks a great guy for it, someone who's very tall. He transforms his heart. He enables him to be a good king. But ultimately, it wasn't God's desire in the first place.
Yes and no. It's complicated, right? Like, because even in Deuteronomy, God says, hey, when you say you want to be a nation like the nations around you and pick a king, and of course Samuel repeats that basically.
It says it's good, yeah. But here, yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a question of like what part of the plan of having a king is an insult to God versus what part is an insult to Samuel? To Sam, right? And I think that's really hard to defend. He's the prophet, and he definitely equivocates a little bit in his own speech, saying like, God doesn't like what you're doing, kind of. But then he doesn't. But then he says like, okay, but God said you could still do it. Whatever. You've already done that speech. It's the previous chapter. We don't have to rehash the whole thing. But there is some equivocation there, and like Samuel is the current leader, and like I don't think he's jealous per se, but I think there is a tension between like he's not sufficient. The people don't see him as sufficient.
Right. Yeah, I think you're bang on. And there's an image to it where I also think this is just so cool. So first off, I think it's the tziti that are ripped. That's just me. I don't know. It doesn't have to be.
Before, I'm pretty sure it's not because it's the kanaf and the tzitzit are attached to the kanaf. So and this is very important, right? Because this is we talked about this. I showed my talit, right? Because when we talked about this here, that this is such a big this is Samuel's. This is his mother makes him this robe every year. It becomes his trademark robe. It's even when he dies and later in a couple chapters and stuff.
He's known as the dude with the robe. Yeah.
With the robe, he sets up this whole thing. Later prophets are going to wear robes like his, right? Elisha and Elijah have robes like Samuel, right? This becomes like this whole institutional thing. And all it is a representation of a mother's love, right? Like that's really what it is.
Right. But the thing that I think is important is everyone knows the story where Saul is sleeping and David comes and takes a little bit of his robe to show that he could have killed him. But think about it in relationship to this story.
Mm-hmm.
Because Saul rips the robe from Samuel, and Samuel says, "In this way, the Lord is going to rip the kingdom from you."
Yeah,
So
also,
I think he sees David as the proper heir because he has, just like Samuel's robe was ripped, in the same way the kingdom will be ripped from you. Does that sound right?
yeah, it sounds right. I think there's a couple other pieces to that, though, right? Like there's so the rabbis pick up on this thing of actually we learn to respect our property from this and not like treat our clothing or property like disrespectfully. In fact, David, he's not able to get warm from clothing when he's much older at the beginning of 2 Kings. And the rabbis say it's because he treated the mantle of Saul disrespectfully in the corner.
Oh.
So there is an interesting counter tension between, like, because David's also, if you pay attention, he has his own, like, he has his own moral code. You'll get there. I know you're not there yet. He has his own moral code. He's very, very focused on, like, not disrespecting the king, even when he's challenging the king. Like, he won't do a lot of things because, like, I won't do this because he's the king of Israel.
Because he's the king, yeah.
Or even the princes of Israel, the sons of the king of Israel. Like, he has this very strong sense of what's appropriate for royalty, even when he's kind of, like, running a parallel kingship / almost rebellion. He won't do certain things because they're not respectful to the king. And I think that's really interesting for this chapter too, right? Because what happens with and Saul also kind of has this certain respect for royalty that doesn't allow him to step beyond a certain point. That Samuel is going to strike down literally.
That's good. That's very good. Okay, I want to move on, but I want to give everyone else a chance if there's like a comment here or there. I can only stay for another 15. So
Nothing that Yosef hasn't already said comes to mind.
Wonderful. Teo, you like the Game of Thrones bit? Here is a very Game of Thrones bit. So I'll let you read that 32. It sounds better with a British accent.
Then Samuel said, "Bring here to me Agag, the king of the Amalekites." And Agag came to him cheerfully. Agag said, "Surely the bitterness of death is past." And Samuel said, "As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless amongst women." And Samuel hacked Agag into pieces before the Lord in Gilgal.
Woo! Woo! That's a good little bit. Yes. Continue. I think, that's the end. Finish this up.
Then Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul. And Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. But Samuel grieved over Saul, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel.
Good stuff.
Well, okay, can we just talk about the weird translation on 32 for a second? Surely the bitterness of death is past. So that's not what the Hebrew says. I'm wondering why they made that translational choice in this. The Hebrew is here, like the bitterness of death is at hand, or even almost like the prince of death is at hand. It's a very cool phrase in Hebrew. To me, this I understand that. Looking at the Hebrew, I understand that you're taking the word "sar," and there's multiple ways to read it, and they're saying, okay, now I think I'm safe. Like something has passed.
Right.
But
that's
weird.
What's the alternate for cheerfully there? I see there's a little footnote.
Cheerfully could be haltingly, like as in
could be what? Sorry.
Haltingly, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, haltingly. Compared Septuagint, the Hebrew is uncertain.
So maybe that's the thing, like, because that would give you a different.
Oh yeah, and
the way that you would say that line, that what he would be saying very much is probably dependent on the way in which he's approaching the situation.
Yeah, I would translate that word, and this is what the Aramaic Targum translated as being in chains. Madanim are to be bound and gagged type things where you're wrapped up in chains. It's a very Adanot, Madanot are always fetters. I can't think of a time. I understand. There's an interesting reading because the same root can be used for something like a luxury, and in fact, it's the word for the Garden of Eden. Eden, ma'adan, Eden is the same word, but it's this play on the fact that luxury is actually like enchains the person who participates in it. But it's never been used to mean happy or cheerful as far as I know. There's a very weird, I understand that there's a positive sense, but it has nothing to do with being happy.
But some people don't some translate Eden as delight?
Correct. Well, they do, but I think it's not because etymologically it means that. I think that's an exegetical reading. And I'm wondering if that's influencing your translation here, actually. That's an interesting point.
Right. And that without a doubt has an effect on English, like the Garden of Earthly Delights. Like that's sometimes how Eden is conceived of in like Europe.
Yeah. There's also in 33, this parallels the end of the Song of Devorah with the mother of I'm blanking on his name, the person Elka.
Sisera? Yeah,
yeah,
Sisera, just like you made people childless.
Yeah, so there, his mother's waiting for him, and then, it's the same kind of play there.
Is it just me, or is hacked like the best way? It's not sliced. I just like that in English, the hacking to pieces. I like it.
Yeah. I was just looking at it. It's interesting because like New King James said cautiously and NIV says confidently, where this one says cheerfully. So it's definitely that really does change things. However, it I don't know, but yeah.
And I should say that later on, when the kingdom is divided between the north and the south, they take is it a prophet or a man of God? Specific, takes a robe and cuts it into pieces and tells someone, okay, you take the pieces.
Yeah, it's a prophet. He wears a new robe and goes out to the guy and has him cut it up.
Because that's the other thing, is that Saul maintains, even as the tribes kind of go to war, there's special loyalty in his tribe.
It's also the speaking of the Benjaminites, right? It's the concubine in Gibeah, right? She was also hacked into pieces and sent to the tribe.
Right, hacked into pieces. Well, so this is very interesting because it's essentially, I think we are supposed to see some kind of a parallel between Agag and Saul, and the garment as being somehow a symbol of the kingdom. That you can see, it's like everything is falling apart.
Well, I know, because even the thing you said way back in the day with your kind of Passover lesson about like remembering is like bringing the pieces back together. So the whole thing of like you have to forget, and then you cut it up into pieces, and it's like that's for your memory, so you remember not to forget. And so which is like a conscious separation of this thing. You're not going to put this bad guy's body back together, which is really what you do when you behave like him,
right?
Which is what you do when you forget that he was a bad guy and did bad things. So
yes, yeah, no, that's very, very good. Yeah, and even that idea, like I have a friend, and his dad had an affair, and his parents stayed together, but he had a Christian counselor, and they advised him, okay, you can't have any conversation with this woman anymore. You shouldn't even pray for her anymore. And the idea was like, you're making a conscious decision to, when you, as an act of will, I'm not going to put effort towards this person, even when it comes. So you, like, there is an importance of, I'm not going to talk about this, I'm not going to do anything. And yeah, that does to some extent put them in a particular mindset to you, but that's always making sure the frame is a particular way. Now, I do have to be going, but I need to share two things with you guys very quickly. Number one is that here's the first little bit of irony, is this is from 2 Samuel. When Saul dies, it says this: by chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the horsemen were close upon him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. I answered, here I am. And he said to me, who are you? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. And he said to me, stand beside me and kill me, for anguish has seized me, yet my life lingers. So an Amalekite will kill Saul, right? And David, when he's supposed to be raiding Israel, like he seems like he's an enemy to Israel, he's actually raiding the Amalekites. He's fighting against them. So there's an Amalekite who kills Saul, and then the final one, Agag is the king of the Amalekites. Joseph, who is an Agagite?
Haman.
Yeah. So the villain in the genocidal maniac in the Esther story is Haman, who is a descendant of Agag. Within rabbinic material, they'll say it's more like he acted like Agag.
He really descends.
He really descends. Okay, well, good.
And who's Mordecai?
Oh, is Mordecai he is a Benjaminite, isn't he?
Benjaminite, the son of Kish. Yeah, it was Kish's Saul's father, right? So he is definitely. It's the entire story of the Esther, and actually should be read through this section of Samuel as a lens, because you actually can see that they're the tikkun. They repair the sins of Saul. That's how the book of Esther tells you. Mordecai and Esther are repairing the sins of Saul. It's actually really interesting because it's not. If Ruth is a Davidic kingship story, Esther is a story that actually justifies the kingship of Saul and kind of repairs his legacy. It's a very non-Davidic story.
Yes.
Really,
history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
right.
Yes. So this is a great way of thinking about it, because also when we're talking about things, people talk about having a time machine and killing Hitler. That's one of the ways that you can read. I didn't bring this up before, Kirk, because I didn't want spoilers. Okay. But when wipe all of them out and he spares Agag, there will be a genocide attempted to be committed by that person's descendants. That he, like, there's all this stuff that's, I think, going on within the text related to that. So
in fact, the most famous comment of the rabbis on this section of Samuel, when he saved Agag, like Saul tries to keep Agag alive, is they say, don't try to be more pious than God.
Don't try to be more pious than God. That, Cassandra, the bits that I think you were attaching to throughout this story, I think that's like a good summary of what the criticism is. Don't try to be more pious than God, where he's like, I only did this. Okay, let me do a check-in, and then I think we'll call it. Teo, let me check in with you first. Thoughts?
Oh, I'm just really glad I'm finally able to catch one of these live enough that I can jump on.
Awesome. Yeah, I try to do them every single Thursday at this time, so it's great to have you here. It lends more credibility to the reading of the text.
After reading earlier about the fattened sheep, I could really go for some veal right now.
Go for it. Go for some lamb. No blood in it. We discussed.
No,
this.
not lamb. Veal. I don't know.
Oh, veal. That's right.
For some reason, I have a craving, but yeah, I mean, this was an interesting reading. So, what part of how many chapters are we going to go over next time?
I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And,
I mean, the
do you ever
anointing of
consider
David is a
going-
very good one. It's a very good story. There's a lot there. So
What I was gonna ask is, do you ever consider going on another one of those, like just like you did the one reading of the Epic of Gilgamesh? Do you ever consider doing another like comparative mythology stream, or?
are you? I think Yosef is leaving. Yeah, bye, Yosef. Yeah, I would be interested in doing something, but I'm not sure what. So maybe more in the future. I'll talk to you about that. Who knows? Maybe
Macbeth.
maybe I was just gonna say maybe we'll talk about Macbeth. I would love to do Macbeth through this lens.
Mac or Mick?
Mac,
Okay.
Macbeth. Beware, Macduff. Beware the Thane of Fife. Cassandra, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I really like Samuel though. This has been a really interesting study. So excited to do it every week.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Kirk,
Yeah, no, I mean, we pretty much covered everything.
awesome. Mikhail,
I think I said a lot of stuff. So
you did.
And,
Well,
and
That's
most of
good.
them were great,
I
Michael. Most
stand
of them.
by most of it.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, these are just some ideas, just to consider. Not that we're actually going to do them, but Greek, potentially maybe going over some Greek mythology, ancient Greek mythology, like the Iliad or all that.
So the
Goddess in the Iliad.
thing, Kirk, is that I really like to talk about stuff that I think I have chops in, and I really knew the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't really know Greek myths that well. Like I know them, I've read the Odyssey and all that stuff, but I just am not as secure with it. So there might be something particular to go through, but I know Macbeth. I know Macbeth very well. I proposed to direct a production of it, so I went through a lot of material in order to do it. But yeah, so
yeah,
I think
would love to go over Shakespeare. That would be fun. I think just like a few.
Yeah, likewise. And Macbeth's like one of my favorite. Probably one of the only ones I've actually read multiple times.
Oh, good. Yeah, I stand by the Michael Fassbender version. I think that is a good film version. There is, okay, and with my last minutes, I will share with you what I think is a good production. If you guys like this material, there was a production that, Penn and Teller.
Yes.
Teller directed a version that leaned heavily on some of the more horror elements, and I think it's a very good production. And they did the witch scene as like a musical almost. Like they did it as a song, and it was pretty grand. Is this the one? I suppose I can just leave you guys to try to find it yourselves. But it was in 2 parts, and I don't see it anywhere. Maybe we'll talk about it in the future. Actually, now I want to do that. So after we finish 1 Samuel, before we do 2 Samuel, we'll spend an entire time just talking about Macbeth.
Sounds good.
That's my promise. Okay, I'm just going to cut it there. Thanks, guys, for coming out. God bless.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
David. Thank you, guys. Bye.